So my name's Chris Hill. I see some familiar faces. Good to see everybody. Thank you for having me, Zach and Hatch. My story is one that's kind of unique that some of you guys know, but I think I'll go a little bit more into detail about that today and share some of my struggles and the challenges, but also some of the successes and kind of what's helped keep me going along the way. About a month ago, I met up with a buddy down in Roanoke, spoke at their local chef chapter talking about the book I had just published. And he said, you know what, Chris, you should come to this camp that I cook at every summer. I don't know if anybody knows Victor Wooten, but he is one of the preeminent bassists in the world. And every summer he has a camp down near Nashville on his property. They bring a bunch of campers in, and he does this amazing food. I mean, everything's farm to table. And you think camp food, you're thinking like hot dogs and I don't know, meatballs and things like that. But it's really pretty incredible. Actually, the day I left, they killed a rattlesnake and smoked that and then grilled it and served that for all the campers. Sounds pretty delicious, huh? Yeah. But, so I said, yeah, you know what, I'll come on down. Not realizing that Nashville is about 700 miles away from here, and it was about a 13-hour drive. But the way he framed it, he said, you know, Chris, it's about cooking kind of, but this camp, it's magical. Like once you're there, you'll understand what I'm talking about. And it's about personal growth and getting better. And so I got there and I got to meet Victor, and he was sharing his story the first night I was there with the campers and kind of what his journey was like and kind of how, you know, everybody sees him on this stage and how he's incredibly successful. He has the band Bella Fleck and the Flecktones, and they do all this great work. He's, you know, performed in, you know, all these countries all over Europe, you know, South America. And here he is with, you know, 20 campers telling his story and trying to connect with them and help them in their journey. And he said, you know, everybody sees me on stage, but nobody sees the last 25 or 30 years of, especially in the early days, you know, cleaning the bathrooms and things like that. So today I want to talk a little bit about, you know, those times in my life when I was the one cleaning the bathroom, so to speak, and the times that aren't quite as glamorous as they can be, that none of us really want to go through, but they're actually part of what helps us get to where we want to be. So my journey starts, you know, back in Atlanta where I grew up. Great family. My dad's always been really supportive, and he's been kind of the one that's showed me how work ethic is so important and how if you really work really hard on the things that you want to accomplish, then you can kind of get there. But then when I was 9 years old, my mom got diagnosed with cancer. And for all of us, you know, you're 9 years old, you're trying to kind of make sense of it. And we just knew that mom was sick, that, you know, she had to go to Boston for 6 weeks for bone marrow transplant, or to New York for a month for a different surgery, or was in the hospital getting chemotherapy. And, you know, we'd see her and she'd be bald. And you're trying to make sense of it as a 9-year-old. A couple years later, it went into remission, and then it actually came right back. And then when I was 14, she passed away, you know, after a 5-year bout with cancer, which is hard for anyone, I think, especially when you're that kind of tender age of 14, 15, 16, guy or girl, whatever. You're trying to kind of find your way, figure yourself out. You know, I was a kid at school that wasn't necessarily different, but I was the one that people couldn't really relate to as much anymore because, you know, my mom wasn't there picking me up from carpool like everyone else's moms were. So it was challenging, but at the same time, she was relentless in her fight with this cancer, and she wouldn't quit. And a lot of the resilience that she had is kind of what helps keep me going, you know, now in my journey, and especially the last couple of years when things have been really challenging for me. So here I am. I'm 14. Good friends, you know, good childhood otherwise. A very supportive father. He was great for us. Put us all through school, and then I went off to the University of Alabama, where I got a double major in English and Spanish. And I thought, okay, I've made it. You know, I've made Dad proud. I got my education. I'll get the job. I'll, you know, buy the house, find the girl, et cetera, et cetera. And then I realized that a degree in the humanities isn't going to get me very far, right? I couldn't speak Spanish well enough to be like a bilingual translator, and I definitely didn't know the English language enough to be a teacher or something like that. So I had a bunch of kind of odd restaurant jobs, and after about 2.5, 3 years, decided to go back to grad school. I took the GMAT, did pretty well, got a scholarship to go back to the University of Alabama. And then at that point, I had a great time, went back for 1 year, lived with my brother and sister at the time while they were there. And then we finished up that year. I got a job in consulting back home in Atlanta. But it was a great time for me. Probably my favorite year that I really had a chance to spend doing anything. I was with my brother and sister, who I love dearly. I got to meet friends whose weddings I was in, and actually my professor, Dr. Alloway, talked to him over the last weekend. So it was a great time, and it kind of helped me figure things out, so to speak. I got this job in consulting. We got to work with Fortune 500 clients like Noah Rubbermaid, SunTrust, Novartis Pharmaceuticals, Coca-Cola, folks like that. And so now I'm like, all right, I'm on my way. And I keep going back to this idea, whether it's then or when I finished college or even farther along, that people now ask me all the time of, so Chris, when did you feel like you made it? Was it when you got to this certain point of getting the job or most recently getting the book or whatever? And I'll circle back around to that, but I'm going to answer that in kind of a very roundabout way. So I got this job and then realized about probably 2 days in how much I hated it. I worked with this company that wasn't a whole lot of fun, and my boss didn't really empower us. She wasn't really the type of leader that I want to be. So about after a year and a half or so, I came to some truths for myself and realized that I can't spend the rest of my life doing this. So I fear of letting my dad down, try to have one of those lunches with him, where you try and sit down and you put off telling the important stuff as long as you possibly can. That was me, and I finally told him, I said, Dad, I know, because I didn't want to disappoint him. He put me through school, he worked so hard, he has a business himself. I felt like he wouldn't understand me kind of going down this route. But he did, he understood. And that fear of not knowing what he was going to say, but also not knowing what the next step was going to be. I decided to move up to Virginia, open up a restaurant, but I've learned to kind of embrace that fear, because in doing so, it kind of reminds us, A, that like, all right, we're alive, and like every day is not like Groundhog Day, but also that we get to kind of choose what we do with our life, and the more we can create meaning in each day and make them different, then the more we get kind of enjoyment out of it. So I really, since then, have started to embrace this idea of embrace the fear. And that's kind of where I'd say the journey starts for me. It's been 6 years since then. I opened up the restaurant down here on Plume Street, a couple blocks away, Three Way Cafe. And okay, so now have I made it, right? It's like I'm 28, I had this restaurant opened up, and things are going well, right? Everybody back home sees I got this restaurant, and all my friends back home are buying houses, starting families. They have their big time real estate jobs or in advertising or accounting, and I'm still kind of trying to figure it out. But I can at least report this back home that I'm doing well. So then we open up. The first 3 years go by without me seeing a dime, and it was a long 3 years, as you can probably imagine. I'm working 4 nights a week bartending to try to make bills make ends meet, and it still wasn't enough. So I'm out here parking on Main Street or on Plume or wherever, and put the money in the meter. The meter expires, get a ticket. Next day, the same thing happens. I walk outside and where's my car? And if anybody's been there before, you know exactly where it is. It's in the impound lot, because you've had too many tickets and now it's $300 to get out of the impound lot. So, I've been there, over and over again. I had to call my dad. Dad, could you loan me some money? So the struggle was real, and it was challenging, and it felt like you're kind of backed in this corner, and it's like, how am I supposed to get out? You're working really hard. You feel like you're doing the right things, and just whatever was happening, it wasn't working the way that we kind of planned. So, but at the same time, I started building my personal brand. A company originally called Bachelor Kitchen, which I then turned into my chef, Chris Hill. But I started doing a lot of local TV and working with events, and I had the opportunity to give a TEDx talk. So again, it's like, all right, have I made it, right? Everybody sees I'm doing good things up here. And then I link up with a business partner and kind of got taken advantage of, and the whole Bachelor Kitchen company that I invested a lot of money in from my mom, that when she passed away, she left us a little nest egg that we could, buy a ring for our boyfriend or girlfriend, or a mortgage for a house. I said, Dad, I want to put this money towards this company because I really believed in what I was doing. So that went to hell. And there I'm back at square one, depressed and sad and trying to figure things out. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start writing from my heart and being an English major, I love writing. I love connecting with people through like the written word. So I started writing about the struggles and the challenges of being a chef and being in the restaurant industry, and the relationship issues we have, the late nights, the long hours, not being at home for holidays, all those kinds of things. And I wrote this article called Dear Chefs. And this is, keep in mind, this is 5-6 years after the first time I ever posted a blog. And up until that point, I'd gotten 10 readers, my friends and parents, maybe 30 readers when I started to get a little bit more of a following. But then I posted this article and got maybe 200 views. I'm pumped, all right, but it still wasn't. I knew it was better than that. And then 2 weeks later, I see it starting to go viral, and it was one of the most gratifying days of my life. Got 90,000 views that first day that it went viral, and over the course of the next month, I got 1,000 emails from people saying, like, thank you so much for writing this. It was me at a time when I was struggling. My girlfriend was pissed at me because I was working all the time, and I couldn't really show for what the work I was doing. It wasn't really paying off financially, but I knew that it was in the long run in the best interest for what I would be doing, with my career. So I wrote that frustrated. I literally all night hit publish, and kind of scared too because I was putting a lot of myself out there, but people all over the world connected with it. People saying, thank you so much for writing this, Chris. You saved my marriage. You helped me look at the career in a different way. Your grandparents emailing me saying, hey, now I understand why my little granddaughter is in culinary school. Things like that. It was really pretty cool. So my followers on Facebook would jump from like 5,000 to 10,000 pretty much overnight. I'm like, all right, I'm starting to get there. Maybe I've made it now. I got to give another TEDx talk about 6 months later, and so now I'm a 2-time TEDx speaker. I'm doing TV all over the place, all over the East Coast. I have a lot of followers on different platforms, and then it's time for our 5-year lease to kind of decide what we're going to do down at the restaurant. Do I want to keep going? We finally, after the first 3 years, started getting paid a little bit, but it still wasn't paying off the way I thought it would. So I had a conversation with my business partners and said, I'm going to move back to Atlanta. We had these plans for a restaurant. My brother and I actually, he's a mixologist in Atlanta, and we said, let's do this together. We found an investor and we found a location, and I packed up my bag very similar to how it was when I moved up here 6 years prior, and moved back home to Atlanta to open up this restaurant called Smoke and Still. It was in Modern Barbecue in Bourbon. As I'm driving back, I'm thinking about the times up in Virginia that were kind of bittersweet, but also I was really excited and starting to envision this restaurant that was coming to life in Atlanta. So as I'm there driving down the I-85, getting to Atlanta, I pull up to the restaurant where we're actually having a meeting the next day with the landlord to check out the space. And I stopped by, and it was midnight at this point, so not a whole lot of cars in the street. I just pulled up across from the restaurant looking at it, and I started to envision myself in the kitchen with my guys and girls next to me excited. I could envision my brother back there behind the bar shaking drinks, customers happy. Finally all this hard work was paying off. Finally now I can take everything I've built up in Virginia with my brand and being a cook and a chef, and then now I can show them that I've made it down here in Atlanta. So the next day we walked through the space with the landlord, and it was just what I thought. It was beautiful. And we were, the following Friday, going to put an offer in when that morning I got a call, an email rather, from the investor saying, hey Chris, something came up and I'm out. So, here I am. I put everything into this, and once again, there's another kind of hurdle thrown in my way. So I look at my brother and I say, hey man, we're going to do this. We got some more investors lined up. And he looked at me and said, Chris, just so you know, my wife and I, Karina, are looking at maybe having a baby. And I said, how crazy the restaurant industry is? Are you sure you want to try and open up a restaurant at the same time that you might be having a baby, being a new dad for the first time? So I said, maybe you should decide between one or the other. The next week he said, we decided on having the baby. So here I was, I moved back to start over, to make these dreams happen, after putting in so much time and effort and energy into making it work, and then being once again told, hey man, it's not gonna happen. So for 3 months I was miserable. This was last fall, and we go to my cousin's wedding, and I was so pissed, yelling and cussing at my brother after a few drinks, and I was just very resentful of the way he handled it. At first, the very first sign of adversity that he saw, he was out. Whereas here I was, 3, 4, 5 years of putting in the time and making sacrifices to try and make this work, and he couldn't even give a couple weeks or a month. So I'd lay in bed and I'd sleep, and I was trying to just make sense of it and figure out what the next move was. I didn't want to start all the way back at the bottom in Atlanta where nobody knew who I was. So I just started writing again. And I started writing about, again, my struggles and the challenges and what just happened and how you just got to keep going. And that's when things kind of shifted almost entirely. I went from 10,000 Facebook followers to 20, 30. Now I have over 100,000 followers. And it was people being able to connect with my message and me being able to connect with the part of them that's very human that we all kind of have in common. So I decided to, in that whole process, write a book, where I interviewed a bunch of really successful chefs who've done incredible things, told their stories of success, but also their challenges, and published that back in May. And so now it's like, okay, I have 100,000 Facebook followers, given 2 TEDx talks, been viral, I have all these followers everywhere. Now I've made it, huh? And I keep going back to that question. But here we are today, and last week I actually had the opportunity to sign with one of the top literary agencies out there up in New York, who wants to represent me for my next book. Which is, if anybody knows, the publishing industry is a huge deal. Like each of these agents get 200-300 queries a day from writers that are trying to get published, and nobody wants to read their work. But I was able to break in and get somebody that cared about my message and saw that I had a decent platform that I've been building over the last 5, 6, 7 years, and I was given an opportunity. So I look and I ask questions like, so what's different for me now, Chris, today, versus a week ago or 2 weeks ago, before when I didn't have the literary agent? Nothing really. I was still working just as hard. I was still just as committed. I still believed in my message just as much. But what, so I didn't have the agent? And so I tell people all the time, like, just keep going. Like, you don't know when that next win might be. And the truth is, when you ask the question, like, have you made it yet? I don't know if there's actually an answer to that, because what I find, whenever you start thinking about that, you're attaching your happiness and your success to a certain milestone. But then once you hit that milestone, you're just moving the milestone somewhere else. So I decided to really just try and embrace this idea years ago, from really when my mom got sick and showed us through her battle with cancer that by being resilient and fighting for something you believe in, whether it's your life, your family, a business, an idea, like by putting in that time and the effort and the energy, that's how you know you're fighting worth something worth battling for. If it was easy, then anybody would do it. And I just look at kind of 3 maybe takeaways, 3 ideas from my struggles and the challenges and some of the successes that have been fun. And I would say, first of all, that failure, any type, is evidence for, okay, what should I do next? Like when I didn't like the job at the office, okay, I don't want to sit in an office all day, so I'm going to try and find another way to use my time. Or when I got screwed over by the business partner, okay, I don't have to do that anymore. Or when I was writing and 2 people were reading it, including my mom and dad, all right, what am I not doing now versus, okay, you write something that people actually connect with, what's the difference between the 2? And learning from how you could maybe do something better in the future, and then using that to kind of help put better work out there. The second thing I would say is this idea that I just mentioned of resilience and persistence, and just keep going. There were so many times when I could have quit. When I was in the early stages of writing this book, I didn't have anybody to represent me. I had, at the time, 75,000 Facebook followers maybe. And I remember my stepmom looking at me, who I love dearly, and saying, just because you have all these followers, how are you not going to sell any books? And I'm like, wow, okay. But I did. I sold almost 1,000 books, which isn't bestseller status, but it's not 3 books or 5 books. So I just, you have to believe and have confidence in who you are and what you're trying to do, and realize that it's not going to be easy. And if you keep going like you don't know if you stop, if the next day something great could have happened that could have kept you going. So maybe you have to take what you're doing and recalibrate it in a way that makes sense. Okay, I still have to pay bills. I still have to take care of my family, pay mortgage, whatever. But maybe I have to take a part-time job, or maybe I take a full-time day job and do this on the side now. But if you keep doing what you love and keep fighting for what you believe in, I think it makes it a lot more meaningful at the end. And then the third story I would say is, or lesson I would say would be that everything in life prepares you for the next move. And I know it sounds very cliche, and I'm not saying that everything happens for a reason, because I don't believe that, but I do think that everything that happens to you can be spun in a way that's, okay, like mom died when I was 14. That sucked. But what can I take from this to make my life better from it? I got screwed by the business partner, or I had to work 3 years for free at the restaurant. Those are hard and challenging times, but what can I take from it and learn from it? And I look at what I'm doing now, where I'm doing marketing, a little bit of consulting work. I'm speaking next 2 weeks from now. I'm speaking down in Miami at a culinary school, the TEDx talks, things like that. I never would have imagined that when I was an 18-year-old kid enrolled at the University of Alabama, getting a double major in English and Spanish. And I look back and I have the English major, so I use that for writing. I have the Masters of Marketing. That's how I was able to understand marketing and build up a platform for myself. The whole cooking, I started cooking when I was 18, and I've taken those ideas with me, and that helped me become the chef that I am today. So I just encourage you to take these ideas, realize that everything can be beneficial if you understand it and kind of put it in perspective the right way. And then persistence, resilience, I think it's magic. I think when there's a lot to be said and a lot of meaning and self-gratification that comes out of really fighting for something you believe in. And then also using failure is evidence to figure out what the next step is. And then one kind of final story, some of y'all might have heard it, it's from Les Brown, who's a kind of big motivational speaker. It tells a story about this young man who works for this architect, and this incredible architect. He's kind of the late years of his life, getting ready to retire, and he looks at the young boy who's been working under him for a while and says, I want you to build me a house. I'm going to go vacation over in Europe for a little while, and I'll check in on you every now and then, but I'm going to leave it up to you. You're going to build this house, and I want you to make it beautiful. I'll give you a certain budget, but put as much energy as you want to into it, and I want you to make it great for me. So the guy goes off, the kid starts building, and he knows what to do. He knows how to make a beautiful house. He knows the work and the energy and the time needed to put into it. Checks in with the boss and while he's gone, and it takes 7-8 months to get the house done. The boss comes back and looks at it and is kind of disappointed, because he says, well, this is what you got for me? Like, this is all you put into it? And then he hands him the keys and says, the house is for you. I think that's how it is with us, and a lot of times with our lives. We have these opportunities every day and don't realize that what we're doing today and tomorrow and the next day creates the house of our life that we're going to embody for as long as we're here. So I think it's just important to realize that we have an opportunity to hopefully do the work we love and be passionate about it and keep doing the work that you want to, but keep fighting and putting the energy in. So that's all I got. Thank you. Thank y'all for coming. Yes, ma'am.
So what is your advice for business owners or new business owners that maybe they've started a business that's kind of like where you were with your kitchen? It's kind of maybe puttering along, but it's not kind of like going gangbusters how they want it to do. What would you kind of like advise them?
Well, I think a couple of things. I think it's important to figure out how important it is to you. It's something like, I know for you, we talked before about putting some money into it and things like that. I think it's really important to figure out how important it is, and if it's something for me, I wasn't going to quit the writing and the building the brand for myself. I knew it was taking me somewhere. I knew it was going to be a marathon, not a sprint, which is why I was able to kind of keep going when there wasn't any sort of monetary reward for years. But if it's important and you think that it's on the right track, then I would suggest, how can I maybe keep doing this, but then find an additional stream of income? Maybe as much as most of us don't want to, maybe I'm going back to, maybe I have a full-time day job, but maybe I'm working a couple nights a week freelancing for somebody, or maybe I'm doing something else to make up for that. I think that I would probably work harder than anyone I know, and it's still a work in progress. And I think a lot of people, when you start these companies, and I'm not suggesting you, but a lot of people start companies and they don't realize like the massive amount of insane work you really have to put into it. I mean, I had this guy, 22, 23 years old, just fresh out of culinary school pretty much. He looked at me and he's like, Chris, he's like, so when do we get to like kind of sit back and just watch our team do the work for us? I'm like, dude, you're fucking 23 years old. Like, if you want to make this like your life, like your career, then put in the time and the effort and the energy. And I think part of putting in that time and the energy makes it a lot more rewarding. It's kind of like with a relationship. If you put in a lot of time and effort and energy into it, then there's a lot to be gained from that. And knowing that you have to do that to make it meaningful, I think, is important. But I think keep it going, as long as it's not wrecking your life and your family, and like you're falling super behind on bills. But I think Gary Vaynerchuk talks a lot about going to garage sales on the weekends and buying stuff and selling it on eBay and making $1,000 on a weekend. That's not really my style. I mean, I could probably make it work, I guess, but yeah, I do different things. I do a little bit of consulting on the side. Miami Speak, making some money doing that kind of stuff. So I think finding different ways. I was actually listening to a podcast yesterday, Dan Miller, I don't know if anybody knows who he is, out of Nashville, and he talked about how he has all these different products that some of them are print, physical copies, some are digital, but he'll sell them for $20, $27, whatever, and he'll have 6 or 8 of them. And he's like, I can sell 300 of these $20 products and make what, $6,000? Is that right? And then I can sell, I can have one product that's $500. It's a little bit like higher scale. That's for a certain demographic. I can sell 20 of those, make $10,000, and finding the different little pieces in the market that have little holes where you can kind of slide in there. That's what I would say. But I know the struggle. I know the challenge, and I can tell you, Hamilton behind you, my buddy, he just launched his Hamilton Perkins collection, beautiful bags, and he's had his day job over at Bank of America that he recently just quit. But I hope I'm not sharing anything I shouldn't be.
Great, please.
But he was working at Bank of America full time, getting his MBA, and still we would meet probably once a month the last couple of years to talk about my business stuff, his business stuff, and how he was trying to get these bags off the ground. About 2 weeks ago, his Kickstarter finished, and he got over 2 times what was his target. And I know he knows the struggle too, of just trying to figure out a way to make it work, trying to figure out how is my product going to fit here in the market. And I think you wiggle around enough and keep putting in the time and the effort, and I think it works. Yeah, man.
So look, when you get to that point, you was going through it, and you got to the point where you see it, you thought it was getting ready to come to the end. It's coming to the end.
All right, good end, right?
End.
Yeah.
You finally just accept the fact, but that entrepreneurial spirit in you kicks in. After you're done praying and after you're done crying, what do you do then?
That was honestly, with everything I've been through, like with the last 5-6 years, with mother passing away, things like that, that was for me the single hardest 3 months of my life, because I most people don't understand how much time and energy and work I put into becoming successful. And then I took a chance and kind of sold my share of the restaurant to chase this thing that I'd always wanted to do in Atlanta. And then when it fell through, it was like, man, I I would literally lay in bed. My niece would come upstairs and wake me up. And Christopher, why are you sleeping so much? I didn't want to. I was literally miserable. And then I think it's important to surround yourself with people that are going to help keep you going. For me, it was almost like a blur. I knew that I wasn't done. I knew that I had to somehow keep it going. It was clear I wasn't going to open the restaurant at the time, but how can I keep it going? So I think the biggest advice I would tell somebody is all right, so you're in this place that sucks, that nobody wants to be in, but we all experience it at some point. Maybe our wife or husband leaves us, whatever. Like, what's the smallest step I can take that's going to keep the mission going? Maybe for me that was maybe sharing like an inspirational quote on my Facebook page that 200 people share, and then that gives me a little bit of life. Or writing a blog post that helps me kind of clear my mind. But yeah, I think maybe just taking like the smallest possible step, and then once you do that, then you can take another little bit bigger step and a little bit bigger, and then kind of, all right, I'm back in the game. If that makes sense. Yeah.
What's next for you?
Well, I just yesterday put the proposal in for this book called Lead Like a Chef, and it's going to be more universally applicable. So I'm telling business stories, restaurant stories, but found 3 kind of leadership principles and theories that are very prominent in the chef world, and telling the story of how those can apply to the business world and running a team in the business world. So so my literary agent, she's going to shop that around. She's been around. She knows everybody in the publishing industry, so she'll hopefully keep doing that, and we'll get that sold. And then I'm doing a little bit of consulting work in the meantime, and maybe another restaurant at some point down the road. But right now, I really enjoy connecting with my community. Having 107 or 8,000 people on there now, and every day I get emails and messages from people saying like, "Dude, Chris, like seriously, like you changed my life," and stuff like that. It sounds cool and gratifying, but then once you actually kind of start getting it, like every single day, it gives you a little bit of a boost of, all right, I'm gonna keep doing this. I want to keep doing this. Yes, sir.
Can you talk a little bit about Medium and your writing process for that? Like how much time you spend on content creation versus kind of like getting the distribution going, and maybe talk a little bit about the aha moment to even go onto Medium,
right,
as a platform to share your
yeah, man. So it was probably about 2 years ago ish. It was 2014 of the spring, and I remember Gary Vaynerchuk talking about how there's this new platform. They've been around for a little while, owned by the guys that own Twitter, that it's like a blog sharing platform where everybody can share their voice, and and it's very democratic. So they don't just share your stories if you're Stephen King or John Grisham or some great nonfiction writer, but if you have something good to say, they'll find a way for people to find it for you. So me being a writer, I already had a blog anyway. I said, all right, cool. Like I trust Gary. I love writing anyway. I'm doing it, so I'll give it a shot. One thing I would say in terms of content that sometimes I find a roadblock. It's like, all right, what am I going to talk about now? Like that I haven't already talked about, or that's not in the book, or that I don't speak about, whatever. And that's when I'll just look through my emails from people or Facebook messages and find, I'll find of the last 100 I've received from people, maybe 5 different themes. 3 people talking about, asking questions about one certain thing, and 3 people talking about another. And that's when okay, well, if these people are asking me about this one struggle they have, there's probably just as many people that have the struggle that aren't actually seeking advice for it. So that's how I kind of use how I develop content. And then the other question was kind of getting it distributed. Before getting something that got a lot of traction, it was hard. But I can tell you, anybody in this room or is watching, if you have something good and want to share it with me, I'll do my best to get it in front of the right publications. There's these different publications which are kind of like magazines within Medium. that have different themes. There's certain fashion ones, there's certain personal growth, there's certain cooking ones, and finding the right niche. And then usually, for most of them, you can submit your story, your article, whatever, for them for their approval. And if they like it, they'll accept it. But then if not, I think you just have to kind of keep grinding it out. My brother, actually, the same one, he's getting a bad rap today, but we were talking like 2 weeks ago, and he also is a writer. He does more fiction. He's written a couple screenplays that haven't really gone anywhere, but he's a decent writer. And he hadn't really done much recently, but like 2 weeks ago, he's like, hey man, so I know you're looking at this. When I was looking for literary agencies, he was like, so what's the process of going about getting a literary agency? I was like, well, it starts with like me starting to write 7 years ago. Like, here he is, he kind of steps in and he's like thinking, oh, like I can just make it easy. And I think a lot of people, and Hampton, you're definitely not one of them, but a lot of people think, oh, I can just kind of waltz right in and make it happen. That's kind of how I thought it was for me. I didn't realize how hard it'd be to build a brand and to kind of keep fighting through these challenges. But I think it's putting yourself out there enough to where, all right, this article gets seven reads, and the next one gets 10, then 30, and 100, and I can tell you my growth with my platform and people caring about what I have to say from last November having 12, 13, maybe 15,000 Facebook followers to now, I mean, it's been exponential. And it's, I think, because there's enough of my stuff out there, enough people caring, enough people sharing it to get to move the needle. But once you kind of hit the tipping point, I think it's like there's no finish line, and it's really cool because I look at, all right, so I'm 34 now, and I have 100,000 Facebook followers. How many am I gonna have when I'm 40 or 50 or 60? And what you build now, like, it's not like you have a job and you're working for somebody and then you decide to take a different job and you start somewhere else. But what you're building is like yourself, like your personal brand or your company, and it can only, well, unless you screw up real bad, but it can really only go up. So.
No, thank you.
Yeah, man.
That's spot on.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.